Hello and welcome to today's Take, hosted by me, Jane Azzopardi, the podcast that goes beyond the headlines and gives you the story behind the story that you see on TV. And this week we go inside the armed standoff that police say foiled a plot to commit daylight murder at a daycare centre.
So there is a lot to unpack here, but let's just work through it in order. It was yesterday afternoon, as you mentioned, in Revesby, at about 4 o'clock, officers surrounded and moved in on those two vehicles, even firing some shots in the process. They will allege those two men were arrested. A third vehicle was stopped nearby, and police say they found a treasure trove of firearms in those three vehicles, plus jerry cans and balaclavas. Now, yesterday, when we were communicating with police, they didn't really give us too much information, but this morning, only in the last 45 minutes, we now know what authorities will allege those three men were doing. I'm just going to read a quick statement here from the Assistant Commissioner, Scott Cook. He says, and this is extraordinary, "This was a calculated and coordinated intervention that stopped what we will allege was a planned killing at a daycare centre."
Well, 9 News reporter Alex Heinke joins me now. Alex, welcome to today's Take.
G'day, Jane. Thanks for having me on.
Now, we're going to start by explaining where exactly you are, because you're a news reporter and today you're on what we call the chase shift. So where are you and what are you doing?
Yeah, good question, Jane. I don't know where I am half the time. As you know, the chase shift is a bit of a weird and wonderful sort of world. This is my glamorous studio. I've got my cameraman, Dan, here. He's just about to get into a bacon and egg burger. I've got my coffee here, my water bottle. We're in obviously in the car. This is this is our office. This is where we do our best work, Jane. And we drive from place to place. So the chase shift, it's basically like the crime round. So overnight we'll get a few emails, we'll chat to the police and they'll say X, Y, Z happened. And this morning we're actually on another shooting. So unrelated to the one that we're about to talk about. This one's out in Riverstone. So yeah, I guess this morning was actually a pretty good way to just sum up what I do. There was a car that got torched that we've seen so often with shootings, don't we? A few neighbours that obviously were caught up in it. We knocked on their doors, checked on how they were going first and foremost, and yeah, they've obviously got some cameras that have got this car, people just setting it on fire, and then it actually, the brakes failed on it and it kind of rolled down the street. You're gonna have to check out 9 News at 6 to see that video. But
yeah,
a little selfless plug there. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. But I was sitting at home the other day when we got news about this one. It just that kind of story grew and grew.
It sure did. So let's go back in time then now. Let's go back to Tuesday afternoon when the story that we are talking about right now first started to break. How was the newsroom handling things? What were we learning at that time?
Yeah, so often the way it is, we only get like the bare basics. So police operation, XYZ street, location, and then it's kind of probably the best time to actually be in a newsroom. As you know, everyone just jumps into gear. Literally, there's a small army basically mobilizes. One journalist and a cameraman, they go out to the scene. Another one starts writing. There's 3 or 4 others trying to get information, and that's how it was. So I think we had Damien Ryan, our senior journalist, great bloke, as he always does, just goes, yep, give it to me, I'll go. And he was straight in a car. You don't really know what's happened, I think, in those first few minutes, but we knew it was something serious. Police operation, shots fired, we heard. Didn't end up being actual bullets. It was sort of those beanbag round. But we knew we were onto something pretty serious. The police helicopter got up, and that's when you see the first pictures. So if you have seen the vision, just for people that haven't, it was 2 scenes, and it was police cars. They were heavily armored. These officers had circled some other vehicles. This is peak hour. You know, this is like 4 o'clock in the afternoon rush. Well, plenty of people around, and then the mobile phone vision starts rolling in. So, you know, a lot of us journalists were sort of all over over social media, community groups. Some people listening and watching might be like, oh yeah, I'm a part of a few community groups as well. I know exactly what you're talking about. People are taking pictures and uploading videos, and yeah, we're kind of like, okay, something's up. But the problem was, police didn't tell us anything. Police were really, really secretive. So what we kind of put to air that night was just kind of what we were seeing, you know, and what we knew, which wasn't much. It was a police operation 3 people arrested. I think we had their ages maybe at that stage, but that was kind of it.
Yeah.
We were kind of left in the dark actually, a little bit, Jane. I was watching on at home, trying to figure it all out. I knew I'd be on it, the following morning, but didn't know much at that
No, well,
stage.
yeah, I remember watching the news that night. The pictures themselves, incredibly dramatic, not the sort of thing that you normally see in Sydney, particularly not at that time of day. And with so many cars and so many people around. And I remember watching the news and thinking, it is unusual for us to have so much vision and so much visual access to a story, and yet the reporters on the ground are saying, look, we can tell you what actually happened, but at this point we can't tell you why.
Yeah, I know. It must be frustrating as a viewer actually at home going, can these guys figure out what the hell is going on? But it's sort of like your spidey senses. Like, I know you've been on the road for years, Jana. You know what it's
I'm
like.
not that old, Alex.
You're experienced, mate. You're experienced.
We'll go with that.
But you do get a bit of a spidey sense, and when you're talking to people, you're talking to police, you're kind of like, something doesn't really make sense here. But I guess the beauty of what we do is it's kind of like just pulling at a loose thread on a shirt or a jumper. You pull a little bit, you'll put a little bit, and then the whole thing goes, and you kind of figure out what's going on. And that came in the form. It was the following morning, so overnight we went out back to the scene where those arrests were made. There wasn't much to gain, but then police media, the media unit, just dropped that press release, and we were just like, "What are you talking about?" And then I think we went live maybe 10 minutes later.
Okay.
With you guys.
Let's rewind just a little bit, because on this podcast, we like to give our viewers, as you've been doing, a bit of a sense of how it all works in the newsroom. So we had the story go to air on Tuesday night, where we had all the pictures, we had all the dramatic visual elements of the story, but no understanding of why. So you're then on the chase shift on Wednesday morning. Tell us, what time does your alarm clock go off? What's the first thing you do, and then where do you go?
So my alarm clock goes off at about 4 in the morning. My partner's just so used to it now. She doesn't even blink anymore. So my alarm goes off, and I just roll out of bed. I've kind of got one eye open. First thing we do is you hit the email straight away. So something that people don't actually know is there's an overnight camera group. We call them Websters. But they're basically, if anyone's you've seen that Jake Gyllenhaal movie, Nightcrawler?
Yes. It's very accurate, isn't it? Well, I mean, apart from the dodgy aspects.
It's kind of like what they do. They basically stay up all night and they wait for things to happen, and they race there and film it. And so we kind of go through that, and then there's police media that we call, and we check in with them and see what what sort of they've been following overnight. We call the firefighters.
On this morning, presumably one of the first things you do is call police media to say, hey, can you tell us any more about what happened yesterday afternoon? At this point in the morning, what are they saying to you?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. So there actually wasn't much to do overnight. It was kind of like, because we did the story the night before, it's like, oh, we better just chase up on it and see what comes. We have zero new information at that stage, and police media, all they were saying is, oh, look, it's a state crime job. I think something's going to come out today. And that is all they'll give you. It doesn't matter. Like, we've been speaking to these people every day for years, and, we consider them friends, but they still even won't tell you anything. So, and they don't give it, that's their job. They can't give away that sort of information. But we went out, so we're like, all right, well, let's just start with what we know. We know that that it happened at, that street. The street is escaping me right now. But we went back to where the arrests were made, basically. There were 2 locations. We went out there just to see if there were any neighbours that could give us any more insight into what happened. There wasn't. There's not many people up at 5 o'clock in the morning, Jane, as you know. But some people walking their dogs are like, yeah, we saw it, but it wasn't enough to sort of go off. And then, we knew that the 3 arrested were in court. So we're like, okay, well, we've got to get to Bankstown Court at some stage today. But the press release came out. I don't want to jump ahead too far.
No, let's
yeah.
go to that now because
Yeah.
I was sitting in the hosting chair on Wednesday
Yeah.
morning, and as our listeners have heard, we played at the start of this podcast, we crossed straight to you with this breaking news, and you read part of that press release out on air.
Yeah.
I was reading it online at the same time as you were giving us your information. And I mean, as far as police press releases go, this one had the information that kind of made your eyes pop.
Yeah, it's actually a very good point. Yeah, so often the information you get from police is watered down, isn't it? It's very vanilla, and they try not to give too much away. But this one was like, what are they saying? They are confident there was going to be a shooting at a childcare centre. Like, even just that level of detail is something that you don't really get. And then we knew something was up. Like, I've actually got the line I read out on the show yesterday, and this was a direct quote from one of the officers in charge. This was a calculated and coordinated intervention that stopped what we will allege was a planned killing at a daycare centre. They very rarely, use those terms, but as we found out, I guess across the course of the day, they were incredibly confident that what they had done was stopped a shooting.
And it sounded like one of the other lines in the press conference was that this was during a routine surveillance operation. Detectives identified 3 men mobilising to carry out an offence. So they were watching these guys, they were waiting, and they were ready to strike.
Yeah, it's sort of when you were watching the pictures and then you're sort of putting it together with the press release, it sort of kind of comes off as a little haphazard. Like they just thought, oh, this might be our chance to get them. But what we uncovered was that, this was very, very much a plan. It was methodical. It was precise. It was almost surgical, the way they sort of surrounded the suspects and did their job. And, it turns out they had to be. They had to be perfect because of what was at risk. Let's not give police too much a pat on the back, but they did an incredible job yesterday.
It was incredible police work. Imagine
it was really good.
If what they were alleging was about to happen actually happened. I mean, that is the kind of thing that would devastate a city.
It's crazy. Like, you think the underworld couldn't stoop any lower, and then you kind of see this and you're like, wow, that's actually what they were planning. And that's been confirmed. It's funny, the longer these stories go on, the more you find out. That's actually been confirmed with some text messages and some notes, actually, the police will allege were inside the car and on these suspects' phone, is that the plan was, from the people that are accused of hiring them, they wanted this to happen at a daycare centre. They wanted it to happen during afternoon pickup. That was the entire plan. So, props to the cops. That's really good from them.
Now, for legal reasons, we're not going to name the 3 people who are before the courts, just because these things can move at different paces, and this has been on the internet for a long time. So, just to keep things safe, we won't name those people. But police did give a press conference later on the Wednesday. How much more did we learn about, what led up to this dramatic operation and what these 3 alleged hitmen were about to do?
Yeah, well, I think the 2 big things were, there's 3. There's 3 big things: the alleged victim, the alleged suspects, and how police were following them and the intel that they gathered, the work behind the scenes. I think they were the 3 things that we were able to get some light on. So, if you start with the alleged suspects, we won't go into too much detail about them, but authorities will allege that they don't have any links to gangs. So it's not like what we've seen in the past, a gang taking out vengeance on a gang. These 3 are accused of just being guns for hire, essentially. So an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old and 26-year-old with no real gang affiliations. That's what authorities, have told us. That's not, my words. That's their words. And they were hired, allegedly by a Asian drug syndicate that wanted to actually take out one of their own members. That's what police are telling us. So I guess that leads us to the victim, because when we heard yesterday a planned killing at a childcare centre, we're like, are they going after the kids? Like, what? Hang on, what's going on here? But we obviously found out that it was a father whose child goes to that centre. They didn't tell us what childcare centre, But something that we were kind of asking was, if you sort of connect the dots, so they were saying, all right, they were on their way to do this. They were on their way to a childcare centre. And the question I asked the police in that press conference was, the margin of error for you guys was so small. Like, what if your car ran out of fuel, or you couldn't catch up to them, or they sped up? Were they gonna be able to pull this off if you didn't get it right? And they kept saying, the police kept saying, oh, no, there was no sort of danger to the public. That was not going to happen. Like, we weren't going to put anyone of the public at risk.
Wow.
But we were like, what if you missed them? What if you missed them? But we found out that they did actually have police at the childcare centre. So even if they didn't pull them over in time, they weren't getting to the childcare centre. I guess it speaks volumes on how well it was planned and how methodical police had sort of, really pulled this off.
I mean, just the thought, I have kids at a childcare centre in Sydney. We don't obviously know which childcare centre was the intended target, but that effectively means that every parent in Sydney right now is saying, well, was it my centre? Are these parents ever going to be told, or are we all just kind of watching over our shoulders now?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. Hey, I think that's the first thing everyone was asking us. Where's the childcare centre? Which childcare centre is it? But police have decided not to disclose that information.
Probably
I believe the
for
childcare
good reason,
centre
I would think.
does know. Yeah, and I think that obviously it does narrow down the potential target, and I think they don't want obviously that information getting out again for obvious reasons. But the bit I just keep thinking of is that these alleged crooks and the plan that authorities are telling us was in place was that they wanted it to happen at an actual childcare centre with kids.
And just, the ramifications of the potential ramifications if they didn't get the right intended victim, but even if they did, obviously devastating for that victim, but all the people who would potentially witness that, and all the children who would potentially witness that, even if they weren't physically hurt themselves. It's mind-boggling to think about.
Yeah, Jane, you bang on. Collateral damage. We've seen it, like one of the last shootings that took place in Sydney, the Auburn kebab shop. If you remember that one, there was a lady working in the back. She got shot. She was put in a coma. The shop owner witnessed it. A bullet just missed him. It's the things that the people on the peripheries that sort of see it or witness it or are impacted by it. The families of people that are shot, just going about their business. Just at work or just picking up their kid from a childcare centre. It's just crazy to think about.
Well, with that in mind, have police given any assurances? Do we know whether the threat has passed, or do we know, now that these 3 alleged hitmen are taken out, what about the people who allegedly hired them? Could they just hire 3 more? I mean, what do we know about, whether there is an ongoing threat?
Yeah, that's very good question. The intended target, he knows now that there's a price on his head. We haven't had this confirmed by authorities, but what they often do, in previous cases, is that person is told basically, you need to get out of here. You need to go into hiding. You need to leave. And that's usually the way it has gone in previous shootings. But absolutely, we've seen that these guns for hire, they're disposable. I think that's why, certainly in the last sort of few years, that's why these drug syndicates, they can pull the strings from another country, and they get muscle for hire. They're cheap. They'll do the dirty work, and if they get caught, it doesn't really matter because they just pay them the money, and that's fine. There's no connection to them. So
it's scary.
Let's hope there's no more, but you never know.
Finally, Alex, what happens next?
Well, a big court process,
which can take years, can't it?
Oh, we could be talking about what are you doing in 12 months, Jane? We'll come back for part 2 on this podcast.
Yeah.
So that's sort of first and foremost. They all no bail application, so they'll remain behind bars until their next court appearance. That's in December. That's in about 8-9 weeks, I believe. But we'll have to see what happens there. They didn't enter a plea. The court process obviously goes from there. I think on the other side for police, they've got no time to sort of congratulate themselves. No. I think, they did do a fantastic job. That was weeks of work to get on top of that. But as you know, like how often do you walk into the studio and think, oh, here we go again, another shooting? Like I'm literally on another one today. So
Yep.
that's the mountain that police have to climb. The one that doesn't really have a summit. They've just got to keep plugging away. Let's just hope, we do so many of these shootings and these serious crimes where police rock up late, but that was, I guess, an example to everyone, not just in New South Wales, but the country. Hey, these cops they're good. They've prevented it. They can actually be preventative, and jump ahead of these things and stop it from happening, which is, I think we can take a lot of comfort out of that, and we'll just have to wait and see.
And that what we see probably is really only the tip of the iceberg of what they're dealing with. They're dealing with a whole lot more, under the surface of the ocean that we never see. Alex, before we say goodbye, I just want to check back in and see whether Dan's finished that bacon and egg roll that he was enjoying earlier.
How was it out of 10? How was it? Pretty good? Yeah. You gave it a 1 out of 10, so that's all right. We'll go find a better tasting one.
Okay. All right. See, I mean, look, when you're on stories like this, sometimes you have to find the fun and the humour where you can find it, because on the outside, the job is incredibly serious. Alex Heinke, thank you so much for joining us this morning for today's Take.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Talk soon.
Talk soon. And thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed our chat, please hit follow, give us a rating. It all helps. We will be back again next week with another episode of Today's Take. I'm Jane Azzopardi. And until then, I will see you bright and early with the rest of the Today team. Have a great day.